Hi, I'm a little Lupie and welcome to Not Just for Kids. So the format for these episodes go, first half is a spoiler-free look at the movie, and the second half will discuss themes and plot points and will obviously be far more spoiler heavy. But don't worry, I'll give you fair warning before the spoilers begin in case you want to catch up before continuing. When it comes to How to Train Your Dragon, I had basically no backstory with this franchise before I watched the movie. I think one of my brothers read the first book, but that's it. But seriously, this movie had me at dragons. If you haven't seen this movie, why haven't you seen this movie yet? It's so good. The characters, the story, the animation. Sorry, back on track. So, the main character of How to Train Your Dragon is Hiccup, a small, weedy kid in a town full of hulking Vikings. You can imagine how well he fits in. Hiccup's strengths lie not in his physicality, but his inventiveness, compassion, and leadership skills. Next, Toothless, the most adorable dragon you will ever see in your entire life. It's amazing how rich a character he is for someone who never speaks. His movements, his expressions, and even the small noises he makes all add to really making him come alive. Anyone who's owned a cat will find the way he moves and sometimes the way he acts very familiar. He even wiggles his butt and flicks his tail when he's gearing up to pounce. And now, here's the group of Vikings around Hiccup's age who train with him to go dragon hunting. But the one I want to focus on right now is Astrid. She's an epic warrior and top of the class who dismisses Hiccup at the start of the movie along with everyone else, but grows closer to him as the plot progresses. I also like that she's not just physically strong and capable, she thinks tactically and is very smart. And this is Stoic the Vast, Hiccup's father. He's what we can refer to as a contagonist, someone who's not quite an antagonist but is still opposed to the protagonist in some way. There, you just learned a new word maybe. I sure did. And finally, Gobber. He's the trainer tasked with looking after Hiccup and the others, but mostly his job is to try and keep Hiccup out of trouble. He's missing a hand and a leg and uses prosthetics. Take note of this because it will be important for a point I want to make later. And now the animation. I'm actually struggling to find the words to describe this animation style. On one hand, it's realistic. You can see individual hairs on people's arms, the skin textures are amazing, and the expressions, oh my gosh, the expressions. They tell you what's going on in people's heads far better than dialogue, and I wish more filmmakers would learn that. But on the other hand, it's clearly cartoony. The character designs look a bit more like caricatures than actual people. However, small touches to the animation that really struck me are the things like the characters flicking hair out of their eyes and things like the way the dragon's pupils react to different things that help make it more realistic. A cool detail that's not even pointed out in this film is that Hiccup actually has a scar on his chin. Attention's not even drawn to it until the second film, but if you go back and look for it in this one, there it is. That's just a nice little thing that they didn't even need to add for this film, but it just helps you realise how much the animators thought about this stuff. Something that I'd like to draw attention to, and it's something I don't think a lot of people would specifically be able to point out about the film, is the camera work. I realise how weird that is to say about an animated movie, but honestly that just makes it more impressive because they really had to think about the way the camera would move and where it would be in every scene. The way they move the camera around the environment, weaving around trees and rocks, never moving through obstacles, it really helps the movie feel more intimate and keeps you grounded in what's happening. And of course, everyone who's seen this film raves about the flying scenes. And I'm not going to be the exception. It doesn't matter how many times I watch this film, I still get goosebumps at the flying scenes, every time. I keep hearing you should watch these films in 3D because they're so much better. Meh, I'm not going to tell you to do that. It's spectacular no matter how you watch it. While rewatching the movie for this episode, I tried to pay more attention to the soundtrack because it's something I don't tend to notice too much in films, but I'm so glad I did. The music is perfectly suited to the Viking era setting, and I noticed these little flute touches that they use to accent certain moments that I just love. When the action is tense, the music just ramps up the tension. When there's a calm moment, the music is soothing. They managed to compose the perfect track for every moment. And during the flying scenes, yes, I'm going back to praise the flying scenes, more get used to it. The music is what I think elevates it from just being really cool scenes to something that everyone who sees this movie remembers and talks about. I'm telling you, if you haven't seen this film yet, go and watch it right now. You seriously won't regret it. Even watching it again, knowing I loved it, and having watched it with no exaggeration whatsoever, 1,000,000 times already, I was still struck by how good it is. And I'm still noticing things every time that I've missed before. Anyway, you'll want to watch this movie before we enter
the spoiler zone. This is your final warning.
Okay, so I'm going to give a quick plot synopsis for anyone who hasn't seen the film but wants to watch the rest of this video anyway, so that you're not lost when I talk about some things in more detail. We open to an attack on Hiccup's village by the dragons that have been stealing their sheep. He uses his invention, a cool bolo throwing device, to strike down a mysterious dragon called a Night Fury. Although no one believes him, he finds the dragon tangled up and unable to move, but instead of killing the dragon, Hiccup chooses to free him. After Hiccup realises he's injured the dragon, who he names Toothless, so badly that the dragon can no longer fly, Hiccup uses his mad inventing skills to fashion a new tail fin for Toothless, so he can fly again with Hiccup riding on his back. Cue awesome flying scenes, all the goosebumps, and epic bonding between a boy and his dragon. Meanwhile, Hiccup's been putting everything he's learned about dragons from Toothless into practice in dragon training classes, quickly making him the top of the class and angering Astrid, who used to be in that position because of her previously mentioned physical prowess and all-around awesomeness. Because of this, she ends up following Hiccup and discovers what he's been up to with Toothless. Cue even more epic flying scenes, even more goosebumps, and epic bonding between a boy, his dragon, and his love interest. During this flight though, we learn that the reason the dragons have been raiding the village and stealing all their sheep wasn't for themselves, but to appease the mother of all dragons. Ha, you get that? It's a Game of Thrones reference. I'll stop now. But when they get back to the village and Hiccup tries to show everyone that the dragons aren't the violent beasts the Vikings think they are, which goes disastrously wrong by the way, Toothless gets captured and is forced to show the Vikings where the dragon's nest is. And then there's an awesome fight scene, with explosions. And unfortunately, lasting consequences for Hiccup. During the finale, he actually ends up losing his leg. But all the Vikings have pet dragons now. Yay! I just want to quickly touch on a few things that really jumped out at me before I talk about the main points I want to expand upon. I like that the whole "it's what's different about Hiccup that makes him special" message isn't too heavy-handed. Toothless swallowing his food whole and not using his teeth for chewing, meaning it makes more sense that his teeth are retractable. The little stagger that Stoic does and the expression on his face after he disowns Hiccup as his son. Just sheer devastation and heartbreak that comes across without any dialogue. It just gets me every time. The complete silence when Stoic lands on the shore of the dragon's nest, really adding to the creepy atmosphere and the otherworldly feel to the island. The internal consistency. If you're using sound to annoy the big dragon, it's going to annoy the dragons you're riding. The expression on Hiccup's face when he realises he's lost a limb. The fact that the opening and closing monologues are the same, for the most part, but if you played them back to back, you could tell which is which just from the tone. Right, so the first thing I want to touch upon is a line that really jumped out at me from the first time I watched this movie. When Stoic is hesitant about letting Hiccup participate in dragon training, Gobber says this: "You can't protect him, you can only prepare him." I think that's a great line and a good lesson, more for parents than for kids. By all means, let your kids know you'll always be there for them, but the best gift you can give them is the ability to do well without you, to be independent and function well on their own. Another point that I think is integral to this film is that even though Hiccup was right, Stoic was not wrong. The nest was important and the dragons can be dangerous. But of course Hiccup's right too. Just because he was young didn't mean he didn't know what he was talking about. Sometimes your kids know more than you and that's not a bad thing. Something I didn't even notice about the dragons until this watch through is that they never directly attack someone unless it's in retaliation. Even right at the beginning, if you pay attention during the first raid on the village, the dragons don't attack anyone until forced to. They just go straight for the sheep. Even after that, when they begin to use their fire, they never aim it at people. They fire at buildings and open areas, using it to divert or force people back, but never intentionally fire directly at anyone. And they only start attacking people at the end of the raid when the Vikings have attacked and injured a few dragons. Also, they mainly go for the towers and catapults rather than focusing their attacks on people. There was also this really nice little touch in the arena when they're having a dragon training session with a deadly nadder, when Hiccup accidentally drops his weapon and shield, and the dragon just stops and looks at him, doesn't attack, and then focuses back on Astrid who's charging with an axe. This was before we even know that all dragons are basically good, and that Toothless wasn't the exception just because Hiccup spared his life. That's a brilliant touch. And now I want to talk about the battle with the mother of him, with the big dragon. Everything that we've learned about our characters and everything that we and Hiccup have learned about dragons comes together here. Things that you thought were just quirks to flesh out the secondary characters actually come back into play. Fishlegs knowing all the statistics, strengths and weaknesses of the dragons is used to break down this monster that no one's encountered before so that they know how to fight it. Snotlout's strength and bravado is useful in actually getting onto the massive scary dragon and attacking it up close. Even Roughnut and Toughnut, who have been nothing but extremely irritating through the entire movie, use their skills at being very annoying to distract the dragon during the fight. And when Hiccup finally gets back to Toothless, they just let loose. Everything that we've learned about the Night Fury comes back, hiding in darkness, quick strikes and powerful attacks, screamingly fast flight, it's all here. I just want to add that the way this battle is shot is brilliant, not only showing us a view from inside the clouds to see what's going on, but also showing us the battle from the perspective of the Vikings on the beach so that we can appreciate it from a distance. Seeing this Goliath being lit up in the clouds by Toothless's attacks, it's just amazing. Finally, the reason I think this movie was so impactful for me, apart from the fact that it's an amazing film all round, is that there are actual consequences for our hero. He doesn't just walk away from the fight unscathed. He doesn't get out of a fiery explosion without a scratch. He loses his leg. For a kids' film, that's huge. I mean, really think about it. It's so rare for a hero to come out of the finale with long-lasting consequences of any kind, never mind losing a whole body part. And he doesn't just leap out of bed and can immediately walk fine with his prosthetic. He has to use Toothless for support. The best lesson this movie offers, especially for kids, is, yeah, he lost a leg. He uses a prosthetic. So what? He's still awesome. He's still the clever, inventive, compassionate person that made him great in the first place. He's still the coolest character in the film who is the coolest dragon, who also uses a prosthetic. The main trader and Stoic's confidant Gobber has a false arm and leg throughout the entire movie, and he's vital to the Viking society. Just because someone would view them as disabled doesn't mean they're not entirely awesome and can do amazing things. But that's just what I took away from the film. What do you think? What stuck with you if you've watched it? I'm a little Lupie, and this has been Not Just for Kids. I'll swim and sail on savage seas, with never fear of drowning, and gladly ride the waves of life, if you will marry me. No scorching sun nor freezing cold will stop me on my journey, if you will promise me your heart and love me for eternity. My dearest one, my darling dear, your mighty words astound me, but I've no need of mighty deeds when I feel your arms around me.